But let's stick with money, because money is the center of all these companies. And the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana has reduced the policy rate significantly. The central bank dropped its key lending rate to commercial banks by 100 basis points to 22.5%. This is the second reduction for this year after the biggest rate cut of 200 basis points in March. Governor Dr. Ernest Addison said the move was influenced by a favourable economic outlook for the country. That's good news. Now, the development could lead to further reduction in the cost of credit in the country. And George Refi will be joining me soon to do some discussion. But first, let's listen to the governor.
The committee noted that the pace of economic activity has picked up, driven mainly by growth in private sector credit, improved business sentiments, and easing credit stance. Furthermore, increased oil production from the Jubilee and 10 fields and the coming on stream of further activity in the oil and gas sector from the fields by the third quarter of the year should give added impetus to overall growth prospects. In sum, there is evidence to suggest that economic imbalances that existed at the end of 2016 are giving way to stronger fundamentals, with to pick up strongly in the period ahead, although it will remain below potential. The 2017 budget indicates a return to the path of fiscal consolidation. The reduction in the fiscal deficit for the year is expected to foster more stable macroeconomic conditions. Rigorous and steadfast implementation of the budget will therefore be critical to the outlook. On inflation, the committee noted that headline inflation and inflation expectations have broadly trended downwards. The disinflation process has been supported by tight policy stance and exchange rate stability. With a stable outlook for exchange rate movements and return to the path of fiscal consolidation, headline inflation is expected to trend towards the medium-term target in 2018, barring any unanticipated shocks. Given these considerations, the committee judged that the downside risks to growth outweigh the upside risks to inflation in the outlook, and therefore decided to reduce the policy rate by 100 basis points to 22.5%. The committee would continue to monitor risks and take the necessary policy actions to move the headline inflation towards the medium-term target. Thank you very much.
Joining me in the studio is George Refi, who is with the business desk, and he has more insight into this. George, what does this mean? I mean, should we be happy?
So the governor was talking about a lot of things, upside risks and all those things and blah, blah, blah. But what he's just trying to say is that when they take that decision to review the policy rate, it's about an outlook decision as well. What will be the outlook for the economy? And therefore, in our question, because the Bank of Ghana's main plan, policy, is to use the various tools at its disposal to monitor the amount of money that is in circulation.
Definitely.
And the whole argument here is that the amount of Ghana cedi in circulation should match economic activities. So anytime there's more Ghana cedi in circulation and it doesn't match economic activities, then we see inflation and all those things. So that is the Bank of Ghana's major priority or major function in terms of trying to ensure that there's always a balance. Okay. So what he's trying to say is that when they do their own extrapolations going forward, looking at the economy, they don't see any risk to economic growth. They don't see any risk to inflation. And therefore, can they reduce the rate at which they lend to commercial banks? That is why some are calling the policy rate, the key lending rate as well, to commercial banks. And if I'm getting it cheaper to borrow from you, Aisha, then it means that when Fred Smith turns to me for credit as well, I might end up reducing that cost to him.
That's what
so
I'm
it's more of a cycle.
So it means that Bank of Ghana is reducing to commercial banks.
It's reducing the rate at which
that is going to reflect in the.
Well, when you engage some other commercial banks, their argument is that there are several variables that impact on cost of credit, and policy rate is another significant factor as well. So you also want to look at the T-bill rate, you also want to look at inflation, you also want to look at other factors that influence cost of credit. So if all these factors are driving down, and the rate at which the commercial bank or the Bank of Ghana lends to commercial banks is also coming down, then the commercial bank do not have any excuse to still hold on.
Right.
What they are saying, some of them, is that it takes time. Imagine I've borrowed maybe $100 million from maybe NHIS or something at a cost of maybe 25%.
Okay.
It might not be wise to lend to you below that. So there is what they will call the transmission mechanism.
Okay.
It could take a while. But again, from January to date, the Bank of Ghana has reduced their rate at which they lend to commercial banks by 300 basis points. That's quite significant.
Yes.
And therefore, well, looking at all the other variables that are also coming down, then commercial banks do not have any excuse.
They don't have any excuse. But since this is the second time, what did we see any signs when it was reduced the first time? Did we see any signs?
Well, again, they were talking about the fact that they think that the outlook is good. When you see, apart from the policy rate acting as the rate at which the Bank of Ghana will lend to commercial banks, it is also an indication about the outlook of the economy.
Okay.
So if the governor and his team sit down and do their own analysis of the numbers and they are saying that, well, going forward, we don't think that the economy would grow as you are expected. Going forward, there is a threat to general price level. Going forward, there's a threat in terms of the amount of money in circulation, and also there's too much money in the system.
Okay.
Then we want to use this tool that the Bank of Ghana has available in terms of controlling the amount of money in circulation to kind of cause some squeeze in the system.
Right.
And that would result in also cost of credit shooting up.
Yeah.
So this is one of the several tools that the Bank of Ghana uses every time in trying to control the amount of money in circulation. And therefore, obviously, it should impact on the cost of credit and also give an indication that if I want to lend to you, then I know that the economy is going to expand. When there are lots of economic activities going on, there's a tendency that government to make more revenue.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you are playing in the government space, or if you're a service provider or a contractor, you might be paid on time.
Right.
So that institution, that financial institution, will obviously want to lend to you, Aisha, if you provided some marketing service for the Ministry of Finance about something. Therefore, they know that government will pay.
Certainly is good news, because the reason I haven't gone to the bank for a loan is the lending rate is just up there.
Yeah.
And so if they've reduced to banks and we're expecting an automatic reduction in the lending rate to individuals like us, that's good news. But wouldn't this shoot up inflation? Hasn't the Bank of Ghana thought about this?
The problem always arises when there is more Ghana cedi in circulation and then it doesn't match economic activities. So always there should be a balance. So if I'm putting maybe $10,000 into this system, let's say this pool is the economy right now. We make up the economy, you and I, and I'm pushing like $10,000 in. Now it should correspond with a lot of economic activities, because you want people to work for that money. They're going to pay for that money. It circulates within the system and all those. And therefore, there won't be a situation where there's too much money in the system chasing few goods, because there are more goods being produced as well. And therefore, that will match the amount of money in circulation. But the Bank of Ghana is saying that from their own checks, their surveillance and all the rest, they think that the economy is expanding, activities are picking up. Therefore, we might not have a situation where we have too much money in circulation and then economic activities are not matching that. So, I mean, every 2 months or something, they have the right to review the rate. So if they get an indication that it would impact on more money chasing few goods, they will quickly reverse that trend by trying to squeeze the amount of money in circulation, and that will quickly be corrected, because some are saying that we are getting to that place where the market is gradually responding to some of these interventions. First, or in the past, it takes quite a long while before you see commercial banks responding. But what we are seeing now is that the lag time for that response by these banks could take a shorter period. And as I'm saying that, the bigger picture is that at what rate is government borrowing from the market as well?
Definitely.
And is the economy expanding to make more money available to government so that they can pay their debts on time? Obviously.
But let's bring it closer to the ordinary individual. How will this impact on the ordinary individual's life? Are we going to see more people establishing businesses? Are we going to see more people setting up their businesses, or, you know, entering into entrepreneurship and all of that?
Some have always said that there is a lag time. It means that when the Bank of Ghana, so for instance, for this drop, it will not affect existing rates or rates that you already borrowed money from me. For those who walk in for fresh cash, that is what will impact on.
Okay.
But what is the broader plan of such interventions? You want to make credit available to individuals.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm a businessman, I go to China, I bring in toffees and all those things. If it's costing me less to borrow from you, Bank Aisha,
yeah,
then it means that I'll get more money to bring in those toffees from China.
Yeah.
If it's going to cost me less in bringing those toffees from China,
yeah,
if I'm going to sell those toffees to you, if you come back to my shop, it will be cheaper.
It will be cheaper.
So
but often that's
credit,
not what we see.
That's
not what we see, because definitely if you buy so much, it means that your cost will be less, because when you sell, you get more profit than when you have limited capital and you buy limited goods and you have to make that
don't
profit.
Forget that
but often when these things come down, we don't see that. Is it automatic?
That's what I'm saying, that it will take time. But if you have from January to date your policy rate going down by 300 basis points, that is quite significant. But don't forget, when that man walks into your bank and takes credit from you, Aisha, and it's not at a fixed rate, that person is not only dealing with the fact that if inflation goes up, as a bank, you review those costs. So he's struggling to quickly use that money quickly and pay you back on time.
Okay.
Because every day the rates are going up, because the T-bill rates are changing, inflation is going up.
Yeah.
So if all these variables and mechanisms are stable, then when a Joe Mansa comes and takes money from us and goes to China and brings toppers, she's going to take her time and say that, after all, I'm not racing against inflation, racing against T-bill rates going up, because the rates are stable. And therefore, there isn't any motivation to hike the price of my wares on the market.
Okay.
And if it's cheaper for you also, it also has indirect impact on the cost of living.
Definitely.
Because then I'll be spending the same 1 Ghana cedi on the same basket of goods for myself and my family as well.
Yes, sure.
And that could also impact on the little money that you have available.
So on the bigger picture, how would this impact on the economy?
On the bigger picture, it means that there will be more credit available. And if these credits are going to go into productive ventures, then you can see businesses expanding as well. Because then these monies are going to be invested. If, for instance, because you take this money, invest in multimedia, more improved services for you and I, more vehicles available, getting more salary adjustments and all those things. But it would take time. It wouldn't be an immediate effect. The fact that you come and your breakfast is served for you to enjoy in the morning and all those things. So, I mean, it will take time. But
I'm a bit skeptical about the increase in salaries. But if you say goods may be cheaper on the market,
in the sense that what is the biggest spending item of most business owners is the fact that some businesses are borrowing from the banks to pay salaries. So if it's cheaper for me to access these credit, and of course I will invest in the business, expand, profits will go up, and when profits goes up, you either plow back, you pay shareholders, or you pay workers more.
Okay. All right. So that means that, on the bigger picture, there's going to be a very positive economic outlook.
Going forward. It won't be
but
immediate
as... if you look at the trends, how soon will this be?
The projection by the Bank of Ghana is anything to go by, let's give ourselves within the next 2 months or even 1 month.
Really?
These effects are going to trickle down, and someone like maybe Mr. Elvis Kwashi is going to get more money, the rest. And all the, so it's a trickle down
So
effect.
in the next 1 to 2 months, I can
3 months, you understand me?
I can plan that
you
in the next 3 months.
On the average, if you should walk into a bank right now, you're paying about 33% as the actual interest rate that you're paying.
And so if you look at this reduction, so how much are we going to be expecting when we go to the bank?
Forward, the next 2-3 months, if things, and the economists will always want to say, all other things being equal, if all these other variables are stable, we could still see things coming down within the 20 range, as in 28, maybe 29% or even 30%, as in the actual cost that you pay as interest on your loans.
But are there dynamics that could make this change so that all things may not be equal?
If government
in this 3 months we are projecting.
Prudent with this expenditure, if government doesn't come out to the market and fight with you for the little credit available, because if you should walk into any bank right now, they say that the best person that can owe you is government, because no matter what it takes, that government will pay to you. So if government gets out of the markets and allow you and I to actually turn to these banks to borrow, for credit, I mean, there'll be more credit available to us, and we can invest in our business. We can expand. But don't get me wrong. It is not going to be the next 1 week or 2 weeks. Give ourselves a minimum of 1 month, 2 months,
maximum of 3 months.
And that will see the real effect.
Definitely.
But the fact is that when you also walk into that bank and you borrow, make sure you pay back on time, because another reason why we're seeing those high rates is that people are not paying back their loans.
That's
and anytime I walk to the bank, that is priced on my loan.
Okay, certainly that's one of the problems, but I am setting that in the next 3 months, if I can go by all other things being equal, then I'm going to take a loan from the bank. I really need it.
That'll be great. Thank you, Aisha.
Thanks so much for passing by. That was George Riafe with the Business Desk, and he says that all other things being equal, in the next 3 months, you can just walk into a bank and probably you get a loan at a very cheaper lending rate. Let's see how it goes. It will be good for all of us.